Is there truth to the woo? Today we're going to be talking about an old book, Feeling is the Secret by Neville Goddard. I'm Nathan Frazier,
And I'm Brett Venat.
and this is Mindset and Mastery. All right, Brett, welcome back to the show. I'm glad to reconnect with you, and we're going to be traveling down what might be a woo rabbit hole today. I wanted to talk with you about one of my favorite books. It's really short. I think it's only like 40 minutes if you get it on Audible, and you could probably sit down and read it in even less time than that. It's a book called Feeling is the Secret by a guy who I really like. His name's Neville Goddard. I'm not very familiar with him outside of his writings. I know people classify him as part of like the New Think movement. You are always the guy that likes to do deep dives into the background of stuff. And so before we jumped into this episode, I was wondering if you had any insight on who this guy, Neville Goddard, was.
Yeah, absolutely. He was also considered a kind of prophet by many, but he rejected all of those labels, whether it was any association with the New Thought or with being a metaphysician, which was actually the study that he undertook that sent him down this road to writing all these books eventually. But he believed he was basically sent to find and explain the psychological truth intended in biblical teachings, right? To basically restore awareness to an ancient esoteric understanding of the mind and the world. So his life was, I don't know, fairly normal compared to where it ultimately led. He was born in Barbados. He was one of 9 children. And by the time he became an adult, he was studying theater and dance. And this took him all over the world. I think it was in the 1920s. He was in England touring with a dance company, and he met a Scotsman who got him interested in metaphysics and powers of the mind. So that was actually a major turning point in Goddard's life. His interest led him to basically abandon his career in the entertainment industry, and he went out on this seeking. He eventually found an Ethiopian Jew named Abdullah, who taught him in the esoteric interpretations of the Bible. He also studied the Kabbalah and the hidden symbolic meaning in the scripture, and that led to most of his writing and lecturing career. Up until the point, and a little bit past the point, that we're going to be meeting him in Feeling is the Secret, which was 1944. So it was about midway in his whole career. He died in the early 70s. He dealt primarily with what he called the law, which was his technique for manifesting physical reality through essentially the mind and the imagination.
Okay. So I didn't know most of that stuff about him. I've kind of always felt, I've read a bunch of his books, and he always seems like a cross between like Western Hermeticism, Golden Dawn, Freemasonry, that type of
Yeah.
quasi metaphysical type stuff, mysticism. And he kind of has, it feels like he takes some of those beliefs and packages them in Christianity safe beliefs for the time of when he was around. He also feels like a mix between like As a Man Thinketh and maybe The Secret. He feels like he's kind of the in between those two worlds where he kind of exists. So that was pretty much my everything that I know about him outside of his writings. That's kind of where I see him landing.
Okay. I also think that this is a nice thread between the last 2 episodes of Mindset and Mastery in an interesting, modern, and practical way. We did a fairly deep dive on As a Man Thinketh, especially considering what a small book it is. And then our last show was about conscious content consumption. So, a lot of what Goddard warns against in this very, very short book is spending conscious time in the negative. And there's a call, I think, throughout this book to live consciously, to not dwell on wrongdoing. And when we think about consuming content and also combine that with the lessons of as a man thinketh, this is a nice reinforcement for like, you better pay attention to what you're doing when you're in front of that computer, when you're on YouTube, when you're on Facebook, Twitter, if it gets that bad, because that is definitely having an imprint on the mind that might be interfering with your realization or manifestation of a happier and better life. So I just thought this was a nice reiteration of some of the themes in those last two shows as well. And before we go, I want to talk about how we got here, right? Because we're talking about Knights of the Golden Dawn and people are like, whoa. But I said to you in a private conversation, let's get a little weirder with some of these. I recently had my first experience with tarot. It was just an opportunity that presented itself to me, and I didn't expect to go into it and leave with all the answers. I just thought it was an interesting, creative exercise, a challenge to the mind, something to approach open-mindedly and with some curiosity. And I found it to be a really enlightening and challenging experience. And I know that's something that you're into as well. There's people in my private community who like to do tarot cards and tarot readings. So I thought I would give it a try and see what happened. And from there, I was just like, yeah, at least for the challenge to consciousness, like let's play around with some of this stuff. And this was your first suggestion when I said I had that desire to pursue some of this more, I guess we could just call it the esoteric. And I wanted to know a little bit about like how you found this, when you found this, and like how it first resonated with you and why.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the mindset coaches and a lot of the, some of what we do here, but a lot of the people like Tony Robbins and some of the money mindset people out there, a lot of what they're teaching is actually magic principles. And by magic, I don't mean like the stuff that you see on Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, or anything like that, but just the belief that reality is not as black and white as the physical world or scientists or whatever might want us to believe at this time, that our mind, our conscious and our subconscious minds have an actual effect on the outside world. And a lot of it starts with self-development. A lot of it starts with the things that you think become the things that you live. And then it goes a little bit further than that. But a lot of the guys out there, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Tony Robbins, there's a book called The Millionaire Mind, I believe, by T. Harv Eckert. A lot of these guys, they're teaching self-improvement, but the principles that they're teaching are actually ancient, hermetic and mystic principles that have been around and kind of occulted by certain groups for a long time. And so I kind of slowly went from one step to the next step over probably the last 20 years of my life, getting into business, wanting to develop myself as a person, wanting to be the type of person that attracts success rather than just somebody who's always chasing after success. And so I kind of slowly was indoctrinated into all of this stuff before I even realized what I was practicing. And then I started coming across some of this more blatant, hey, your mind is creating the reality around you messages from people like Neville Goddard. And once I found them, I was like, oh, this is the same stuff that I've been doing for the last 20 years, except for he's consciously talking about it. He's talking about doing it deliberately rather than just having it be an accidental coincidence of changing the way that you think. And so that's kind of how I fell into all of this. And then once I realized that I was practicing these rituals and these techniques for the last 20 years, and I lead a lot of my success in life to these mindset shifts, then I was like, okay, I'm ready to explore this a little bit more. And this guy's work was one of my first steps into, I guess, dipping my toes into the pool before I just before I just dived. I mixed jumped and dived and said dumped before I just dived head in.
Yeah. So I think if we were to sum up the book and his idea of the law, maybe in one sentence, it is that, and tell me if you disagree, the subconscious accepts as true that which you feel is true. So you have a conscious mind that impresses on the subconscious mind through feeling, and then the subconscious mind expresses these things in reality. It doesn't judge the impressions from the conscious mind, it accepts it as true and finds a way to manifest it as truth. Now, people are welcome to approach that with great skepticism, but I think that we all have examples in our lives, like if we really, really stayed with something and really, really devoted imaginative powers to, whether it was manifesting, the ideal partner, or uh, some kind of satisfaction or realization in our careers. If we were really, really diligent and thorough about that, we might have gotten those things. So making this practice explicit is really, really helpful, because you look back at some of these experiences, you go, is that what was happening there? And can I do it again? Can I repeat that process if I understand what the process is? And I think, like, this book and As a Man Thinketh lay it out slightly in different ways, slightly from different worldviews, but they lay it out really well.
Mm-hmm. So I want to, before we jump to what he is really known for saying is assume the wish fulfilled, what you kind of referred to as the law. I want to take a step back and just talk about, and this is totally a tangent and a rabbit hole, but this book, The Kabbalion, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Inside of it, they talk about gender, the law of gender, and they talk about the subconscious and the conscious mind. And the conscious mind is the male aspect, it's the forcing aspect, it's the projective aspect. The subconscious mind is the female energy, it's the receptive, it takes it in. So in this book, they talk about how in order to create, in order to manifest, in order to generate the reality that you want to live in, it takes both. It takes consciously defining what it is that you want and consciously living in that moment and visualizing it and knowing what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel and really believing that it's possible. That's the conscious mind's job. And then that implants it. It uses the male generative force to implant it into the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind receives it, because your subconscious mind, the reason subliminal messages work, the reason hypnosis works, is because your subconscious mind doesn't really have a filter. Your subconscious mind just kind of takes everything in and works with it. And if you can control what is going into your subconscious mind, you can, a lot of the programming stuff that we talk about in Mindset and Mastery is just that. It's consciously deciding what programs your subconscious mind is going to run on. And so the idea of the Kabbalion and the idea of feeling is the secret is just using your conscious mind to really feel, to really believe, to really have faith in and clearly define what it is that you want, and then to impregnate your subconscious mind. And then those two powers, the female and the male combined, is what creates the world that you want to live in, or the world that you want to manifest, if you want to use a more woo word. But that's kind of the foundation of his worldview and a lot of the Western Hermeticism. Once you start digging into some of the Golden Dawn stuff, some of the Freemason stuff, this is a very common theme. In fact, the G inside of the square and the compass is said to stand for generation or generative powers. That the square is the female aspect, the compass is the male aspect, and the two combined are what allows for generation, for creativity, for your ability to manifest the world that you want to live in. Understanding the power of your conscious mind to implant programs into your subconscious mind leads you to be able to create the world that you want to live in.
There's an interesting tie-in here with a Jungian idea. Carl Jung often talked about like what is in the subconscious has to eventually find a way out. And he presented that as kind of a warning in talking about the shadow, right? That the shadow will manifest in a non-woo way. It will show up in the real world. It will show up in reality. You can't suppress what you keep in the shadow. That was Jung's warning. So in this case, a more positive take is that if you are continuously impregnating the subconscious mind with what I would say is more than just belief, right? Because belief sounds like I can do this, I will do this. This is imagining or having that feeling of the thing already being done, the goal already being achieved, and sending that deeper and deeper and continuously into the subconscious mind. There is a I don't think we can offer guarantees here. I don't think anyone ever did in this realm, but there is a much better chance of these things showing up in reality. One of the things that often stops people is the how, right? And the how, if you are again thorough and persistent with the end or the imagining, the feeling of the end and sending that into the subconscious, the how, according to people like Goddard, becomes less and less important, right? That that what exists in the subconscious will have to find its way out. I think that would be the argument that he would make. And again, Jung would make in a different way.
Mm-hmm. So he says, assume the wish fulfilled. And his philosophy behind it is you don't worry about all of the doubts that you have. You don't worry about all of the, how could this possibly happen? You just kind of trust your subconscious mind to start looking for those clues and clearing the path for you. And we've talked before, either on this podcast or in other podcasts, about like when your brain starts picking something out. You're going to go buy a new car and you start thinking about this new car and you start seeing it everywhere. Or you're worried that your spouse might be cheating on you, and then all of a sudden you start paying more closer attention to commercials that are talking about divorce lawyers or whatever your brain, your subconscious is focused on. Even if you're not consciously focusing on it, little clues and little reinforcements of whatever it is that your subconscious has as its goal will start popping up everywhere. Your brain starts becoming keyed into these things. Goddard's belief, or what he preaches or preached, was that if you impregnate your subconscious mind with what it is that you desire, what it is that you believe will be for yourself, your brain will start picking those things out that will help you along that path. It'll start clearing the path. Clues, coincidences, synchronicities will start showing up that will show you that you're on the right direction. But the way that he says it works is that you have to have faith in it. So you have to have the belief that it already is promised, that it's already guaranteed in order for it to work, rather than asking or hoping, or sometimes the way people pray is, Lord, please help this come into being. The way that Goddard talks about it is you have to actually believe that it's already guaranteed. It's already a truth, and you're just waiting for reality to catch up to it.
Yeah. And I think that that faith is built from that somatic experiencing that he talks about, right? Feeling the truth of these things. And from that faith, you get action. I think the key and what distinguishes what Goddard is talking about from something like The Secret or the so-called law of attraction, just putting stuff up on a vision board, is that you have to be in action. You know, you can't sit on your couch and imagine fitness. I mean, you could do that for your whole life and never get fit. So I remember being like in my late 20s and working in education and being like tremendously frustrated with everything that was happening around me pretty much, and not being able to say anything. So I would just go home and I would write, and I would like talk through while I was commuting for work. I would like talk through all of these really uh, I thought, poignant points that I wanted to make about what education really was. And I imagined all of this becoming a documentary, to the point where I'd be in the car, or I'd be in bed, or I would be on a walk, and I'd be like, here's the thing I'm going to say. Here's the song I'm going to use. Here's the visual I'm going to provide. And someday this will become, you know, a widely acclaimed documentary that wins an Academy Award. And you know what? That was stupid. But the feeling of that thing, that desire to create something, and the experiencing of that need eventually did push something out into reality that allowed me to exist below the radar of criticism in Hollywood or whatever, and getting canceled eventually for having improper thoughts. And it went on, in great duration, and reached a lot of people, and brought me a lot of satisfaction, and was far more uh, sustainable than my original conception of it. But it came from like really, like, deeply experiencing what it was going to look like, what success meant, what feelings I had on the other side of it. And there's other examples of that in life as well. But I think a lot of that existed without proper form, without proper definition for me. It just kind of happened. And then you look back and you go, oh, that's what that was. Right. I
Mhm.
just spent so much time in the imagining and in the experiencing of the feeling of success and achievement with that thing. But now to know what it is, I think is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and you mentioned the importance of action as well. You just reminded me of this study conducted by Dr. Basiato. I believe is how it's pronounced. It was in the University of Chicago, and he took their basketball team and he broke them up into 3 segments. And for a number of weeks, he told the first segment, "Hey, you're going to go out every day and you're going to practice your free throws." And then the second segment, he said, "Hey, you're going to go and you're going to just look at the basketball hoop and you're going to imagine, you're going to visualize yourself throwing basketballs. You're not going to actually touch the basketball, but you're going to imagine yourself throwing the basketball into the hoop. You're going to visualize your free throws." And then the third segment, he said, "You're not going to do either one. You're not going to practice and you're not going to visualize. You're just going to go about your daily life however it is." And however long the study was for, at the end of the study, he brought all of them back in, and the group that practiced free throws, their free throw accuracy improved by 24%. The group that did nothing, their accuracy didn't improve by a percent at all. The group that visualized their free throws improved, their accuracy improved by 23%. So 1% less than the people who were actually doing the free throws. So just visualizing was just 1% less improvement of actually going out and practicing every day. And back to your point, though, if they didn't go out and test it afterwards, if they didn't go out and actually do some free throws at the end of the experiment, all of that visualization amounted for nothing. It takes the visualization, and then it takes a little bit of action to show that you're willing to commit so that the visualization actually does something for you. But it's just one of those instances where there's scientific proof that visualization does impact your skill levels, your success levels, and your impact on the world.
Yeah. Michael Jordan apparently visualized whole games. He would visualize himself through the entire game. So same idea. The results, I think, without debate, are good in that case. So yeah, that's very interesting. But being in action helps you, as you said earlier, it helps you find those opportunities. And in my case, it was like, because I was going through like, okay, now I'm reading this book, now I'm taking these notes. It's just like all of a sudden at the right time, a new avenue that I wasn't expecting. Like my original idea, I'll reiterate, was dumb. But a new avenue opened up to me because of influences that I was having, 15 years ago. And I said, oh no, this is the vehicle to do this thing. But it was a willingness to put one foot in front of the other that made that discovery possible. If I had just been like super focused on there's only one way to do this, and I'm going to visualize that and stand still, that never would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, being in action, I think, is really, really important. And some more practical advice about this whole concept, about this whole law, is I think it requires a level of living consciously and being honest with yourself. Like doing a kind of inventory on what do you believe is possible? Do you actually want it? Do you want the consequences of it? And is it within you to pursue it? And like, that all adds up, I think, to like, do you have the construct that this thing is possible? Is there willingness? Do you really want what's on the other side? And it's like, if you're 50 years old and you say, well, I'm going to be a surgeon, like that might be a place where you need to be more conscious and more honest with yourself. I'm not saying it's impossible, right? But your energy could probably be spent in a better and more efficient way at that point.
If you got shaky hands, I'm not sure I want you taking a scalpel to me.
Right. But the other part of the living consciously thing that Goddard talks about is controlling the feeling, right? Like being in control of your feelings means being on top of what your feelings are, right? Like while you're experiencing, and not letting them exist as those ants, those automatic negative thoughts that just creep in the background and can affect how we feel, but we never really, call them into our consciousness and label them. That's that Jungian idea again of just letting those things kind of go on in the background until they get you. And again, with the conscious content consumption tie-in, don't dwell on the negative. Don't dwell on the wrongs being done to you or the wrongs being done to others. Don't dwell in the negative. Discipline yourself. That's a word that he uses in the book. Have the discipline to control your feelings. And that's a tall order, I understand. But the first step is to be aware of what your feelings are, right? And then to try and, as we talk about in Mindset and Mastery all the time, and in our program, put something new in its place, right? When that thing happens and you're experiencing that, find a redirection or an argument against it, and try to focus on that the best you can.
I think also you were talking about when you decided, okay, I'm going to explore this idea of creating this content, this documentary or whatever it ends up being. Your subconscious mind doesn't really know the value that you assign to something. It doesn't really know whether something is good or bad. It just knows whether something is important to you. So if you dwell on the negative stuff or if you dwell on the positive stuff, your subconscious mind doesn't know which one is good, which one you want more of, which one you want to avoid. It just knows, hey, this is important to this person. So if you're somebody who dwells on the negative, your subconscious mind doesn't know that you don't want all of these horrible things that you keep obsessing over. It just knows, hey, this is what's important to this person. This person really thinks a lot about bad stuff, really thinks a lot about their life falling apart, really thinks a lot about all of the horrible things that could go wrong. I'm going to go get more of that because this is obviously what this person finds importance in. And I think that's kind of
like
an oversimplification. Facebook. What's that?
It's like Facebook.
Oh, yeah, it's the algorithm in your brain. Exactly. And that shows up that in everybody that I know, including myself, the things that we dwell on are what our subconscious mind finds easier paths to flow for us. And you were talking about, you decided you wanted to do this project and it didn't turn out exactly the way that you thought it was going to, but it did end up manifesting. And you said, certain pathways would open up. Certain people would say, hey, you're doing this. I think that's cool. Let me help you because I know how to do this. Or have you thought about doing it this way? And for me, there's this kind of law of resonance or this law of vibration. And wherever you're resonating, wherever you're vibrating, you're going to attract more of that. So if you're vibrating at low levels, you're going to attract more low level things. If you're resonating at a higher level, you're going to attract more higher level resonations. But going back to what we first talked about, believing and having faith in this is what you're put here for. You're not here to struggle, you're here to succeed. You're not here to fail, you're here to help people. You're not here to consume, you're here to produce. You're not here to just sit around and watch TV, you're here to build something. If you really believe that about yourself, you will attract people, you will attract opportunities, you will attract, your subconscious mind will attract and pick out the paths to get you there even faster. And so that's really what I think a lot of this book comes down to, is if you resonate at that higher level, if you can really put yourself in a place of faith, in a place of belief that where you're supposed to be is in this other, you're supposed to be successful, you're supposed to be having influence, you're supposed to be helping great numbers of people, you're supposed to be having an impact and being important and making a positive change in the world. If you really believe that and you start to resonate at that level with your faith, with your belief, it's almost impossible not to attract other people who will reinforce that, other instances and situations and coincidences and paths clearing to help make that that transition happen faster, more conducive with who you are. And just going back to basically the whole point of this entire conversation, which is what you believe about yourself, what you have faith in for yourself, where you have faith that you're going and believing that you're already there. It's just a matter of time, a matter of waiting for the universe to help get you to where you know you're supposed to be, to help catch up with where you're at already in your mind. When you resonate at that level, it's almost impossible for the world around you not to start resonating at that level. In NLP, they have pace and lead, where you get to where you want to go and then you bring people slowly to that. In this idea of Neville Goddard's book, Feeling is the Secret, it's really feeling where you believe you're supposed to be, what you believe your reality is supposed to be, and then just pulling and waiting for the rest of the universe to start resonating with where you've already decided you're going to be.
Yeah, and I was hoping that as we're on the way out here, we could offer some guidance on how to do this. So there's a little bit in the book. You agree that about half the book is on sleep, which I thought was very interesting. Like, he devotes half of the book to sleep. And I think there's an interesting reason for that, because if the conscious mind continuously impregnates the subconscious mind, sleep is where they meet for their date, basically, right? So that is a huge part of the book where he pours the highest level of detail out of everything that he covers. The chapter that follows that is about prayer. It's kind of hard to tell like what kind of Christian or how Christian Goddard is, or like where he's coming to it from. But his conception of prayer is basically creating a passive sleep-like state, and then in that state feeling the wish fulfilled, as we've already mentioned, and then experiencing as thoroughly and as a real way as possible what that feeling feels like. And that is basically his explanation of prayer. Sleep, I pulled some quotes because he argues that what you're doing right before you go to bed is fundamentally important to how all of this law will work in your life. So can I just kind of share a couple of these and get your thoughts? And then I'm interested if you have any like related practice to this.
So I'm going to answer the question first. I have meditation that I do every morning, but I'm not as strict with myself about going to sleep. I don't have a shutdown process that includes this yet. I'm going to implement it. But as of yet, no, this is not something that I've took a strong, strict approach to.
All right. Well, I'm big on sleep, and I'm always looking for ways to get more excited about sleep, to take sleep more seriously, because it's always the thing that we can sacrifice, right? Like, life gets busy. We say, oh, okay, I'll just sleep less. And also in our morning routine show from a couple months ago, we said, nothing really screws up your morning like screwing up your bedtime. And that's not just routine and productivity, but I think a big part of that is mindset. So I found that to be probably the most valuable takeaway in this book, what he had to say about sleep and the act of going to sleep as far as mindset is concerned. So, just the overview first. Sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Just like you pray or meditate in that feeling, you sleep in that feeling. You take that consciously to bed with you. It should be your final thoughts before you drift off. So the first quote is, the conditions and events of your life are your children formed from the molds of your subconscious impressions in sleep. They are made in the image and likeness of your innermost feeling that they may reveal you to yourself. And then, in addition to that, later on, he says, whatever you have in consciousness as you go to sleep is the measure of your expression, how you show up in the world, in the waking 2/3 of your life on earth.
Mhm.
And he gives a little bit of practical advice. I'll just add that. You never draw out of the deep of yourself that which you want. You always draw that which you are. That's very similar to what's said in As a Man Thinketh. And you are that which you feel yourself to be, as well as which you feel as true of others. To be realized, then, the wish must be resolved into the feeling of being or having or witnessing the state sought. This is accomplished by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the feeling which comes in response to the question, how would I feel were my wish realized? Is the feeling which should monopolize and immobilize your attention as you relax into sleep. You must be in the consciousness of being or having that which you want to be or to have before you drop off to sleep. Once asleep, man has no freedom of choice. His entire slumber is dominated by his last waking concept of self.
I know that I've had instances where something was stressing me out, and the whole night, it's the only thing I dreamt about. And I go to sleep worried about this situation or really concentrating on this situation, thinking about this situation. And then all of my dreams are focused on that situation. And I've also had instances where I have a dream and somebody does me wrong in the dream or something bad happens in the dream, and I wake up in a pissy attitude, a really bad mood. And I know I stop and I think to myself, it was just a dream, but it still like sets the tone for the morning, at least, where I'm just in a grumpy mood because of something stupid that happened in a dream. And so I can definitely see the connection between what you think about when you go to bed, what you dream about, and then how it impacts the next day and your attitude as you get up and get ready for the day and get ready to face the world. So I've had instances in my life where what he says definitely rings true.
Yeah. Yeah. The last part I wanted to share is just about how to do this. Feel yourself in the state of the realized wish and quietly drop off to sleep. Night after night, you should assume the feeling of being, having, and witnessing that which you seek to be, possess, and see manifested. Never go to sleep feeling discouraged or dissatisfied, to Nathan's point. Never sleep in the consciousness of failure. So there's some discipline that's required, and taking that consciousness into sleep, like, oh, I'm just going to put on white noise, or worse yet, I'm going to fall asleep in front of the TV like so many of us do, or listening to Lex Freeman, which I think might make me fall asleep while I'm driving, even though he's great. Nothing against Lex. It's just something about his voice. Yeah. So making a practice of going to sleep with mindset as the focus, that was, I think, my big takeaway from this book that I discovered and read for the first time, thanks to you. So I'm glad I did. Been through it twice. And it's so easy. Folks, the book is shorter than the show we just made about the book. So nothing is stopping you. At least do the chapter on sleep. At least do the chapter on sleep.
So first of all, Brett, thank you for entertaining me and checking out the book and being willing to have a conversation about this. I know I'm a firm believer in this stuff. You're a little bit on the sidelines about it, but I do appreciate that you're willing to occasionally kind of dip your toes in the pool of woo and have these conversations with myself and with the listeners out there.
It is my pleasure. There is challenge and lessons to be taken from all of these things, whether you believe them or not. Just like wrestling with them in your mind, I think is a great exercise in curiosity. And I mean, like, bring out the crystals. Bring out the crystals. I'm ready. I thought this was a great read. I thought it had a lot of practical information in it, and I look forward to reporting to the folks about some of my implementation of this sleep stuff. So thanks again, Nathan.
Nice. All right. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you're subscribed on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want some bonus freebie stuff that we have for you, head on over to mindsetandmastery.com. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Catch you later.